Oh no, did we lose Princess?
Oh, we did.
Oh no.
But I see Mary.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So
Welcome.
we are streaming live. We are live on Facebook. Hello to everybody who will be watching this in the future. We are talking today with the editor and several contributors from the Best Lesbian Erotica of the Year, Volume 5 anthology. And
It's beautiful.
there you go. We also just had a great book club about it on Zoom. It was awesome. It was the best attended one we've had so far. Yay. So several people who had been longtime readers, several people who were even new to erotica in general. So yeah, great discussion. There's my dog because there's an ambulance probably.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Are you kidding me right now?
Every time.
He howls? Okay, see.
Yeah, it's super, especially when he's outside and you can see it on the sidewalk. It just, yeah. He'll come in. He'll come say hi later. So today we have, do we have the list of everybody? Princess, you have the names up. You want to introduce everybody we'll be talking to? You don't have it up. Okay. Because I'm forgetting June Rose's last name. I think I've got everybody else. What's June Rose's last name?
Rose is the last name. June Amelia Rose.
June Amelia Rose. Sinclair Sexsmith, the editor. Mary Burns. Rayne De Gray. Those are our special guests for today. A couple of people are running late because we constantly have time zone issues because we're all in different time zones. It happens. So what else are we? This was our selection for Lit Lap, our book club. And it came out in January, correct, of this year. Did it come out in December? Or Karen's shaking her head.
I thought it was December 8th, no?
Did it? When did it come out? Was it December?
Yeah, December 8th.
Okay, I'm getting lost. And Sinclair, are you working on volume 6 too?
I am working on volume 6. It's due in about a month. And so I'm at the end stages of picking stories and reading through everything, but it will be out December 2021.
Okay. That is like so, it's amazing to me, like the like, how, you know what, because we're just sort of stalling too, but how does that feel and work to be like publicizing one, taking stories for another?
It's a lot of things to balance and a lot of like queries in my inbox and different inboxes, and like the stories are all in Dropbox, and then there's a form in Google and Google Drive and different moving parts all together, but it's really wonderful to see how like the themes that emerge from just the current zeitgeist, like what's happening right now, what writers and queer folks are thinking about, and how they're expressing desire. And the past year has been a really unique situation, and so the stories are both, there's many that are kind of the same as many of other kinds that I've seen, but then there's also some experimentation that I haven't seen before, so that's been cool to see.
That is one of the things that we talked about in the book club that people really appreciated, was the breadth of things and the different communities represented and different configurations of relationships. And Princess had this great question about like, is this what lesbian relationships are now? So that's really exciting to hear.
That's a great question. I mean, I think there's just so many groups within the lesbian and queer communities that aren't ever represented and never see themselves, that I feel really committed to doing my best to find writers who are talking about that stuff and really sharing, their own voices kind of perspective on things. So I'm so excited to be, I'm just like so touched by Cleus that I can even be part of this series. It was so instrumental to me coming out in the late 90s, finding the books and just being in awe, like, you know, like I couldn't afford them, so I just sit in the back of the bookstore and read them, and they just changed my world in so many ways. So it feels amazing. When I got my first story published, it was in Best Lesbian Erotica 2006, and just to be part of the series feels important and valuable. And I love being in a lineage, like that really matters to me too as a queer person, like to feel like I have these other queer writers in the past that have been come before me and written all this dirty stuff, and you know, I really feel like I want to honor what they've done. So it feels really cool to be in that line.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm trying to think of, I'm going to look back and see if that's was the story that's in 2006, was that Plow Posed?
I think it was the diner on the corner.
I'm a fan. I'm not gonna out myself too much as being a fan.
It might have been 07 though. That might have been 07. That is like one of the most ridiculous stories that maybe I've ever written, but it was really fun. I mean, it's about a fucking in a yoga class, right? Or after a yoga class. So it's fun. It's like really you want to, okay. But you know, you're not looking back at your old work and being embarrassed by it. Are you growing as a writer? Like you're growing, so it's good.
We were talking to a little bit about the history of lesbian erotica, and Mary was a part of our book conversation. And Mary, you've been a longtime reader. Do you want to just talk? Would you mind sharing a few thoughts about like how you've seen it evolve as you've been a part of it?
Yeah, we were talking about the history of it, and I've been reading it for a long time, probably since the late 70s. And one of the questions we were talking about was how much has it been erotica versus involving BDSM? And my feeling was that it had involved that aspect BDSM for a long time. It was something, and we talked about the history of, you know, the feminist versus readers of BDSM and erotica. I think through editors like Sinclair, it's become far more inclusive. I remember I used to have to hunt for some of this stuff when I was much younger, and now I don't. I also remember it was not as good when I was younger, and it's much better. So yeah, that was part of the gist of the conversation, the way it's changing and has changed over time.
So we are going to jump in. We're going to be introducing people as they read. We now, I think, have everybody. So if everybody, my dog is biting my arm, figures.
Here.
Rain, I'd like, there you go. So if you don't, oh shoot, the Lit Lab Random Show does not have the bios though, like I thought that they did. Wait, are they? They're in my other, okay. I'm going to introduce our first reader today, Rayne De Gray, who's reading from A Summer of Strap-Ons and Sodomy. This is going to be interesting. Rayne is a writer, advice columnist, podcaster, and educator that has been performing and teaching for the past decade. Her work has taken her from kink.com to Harvard University and many places in between. Demystified sex education is one of her greatest passions. So Rayne, would you mind introducing your story that you're going to read and jump right in?
Sure, I would love to. How much of this story am I reading? Like a section, like the juicy bit, the setup, like banging time? Which part? I mean, of course, obviously the banging time, but like
you can decide which bit you would like to share with us.
All of the bits is what I would like to share. Okay, all right. Okay.
If you can get it under about 6 minutes, would be great.
Yeah, sure. You know what I'm gonna do though, because time management is not exactly my forte. I'm gonna put this baby on a timer so that I can, because I'm a professional. All right, here we go. Clock.
So I will just jump in to say, so as Jera has done, so we're gonna try something a little different this time. We're gonna let you have the floor, and the rest of us, if you can turn your camera off while you're reading, and then we'll jump back on and talk. All right.
Okay. This is actually a love story of someone I still think about a lot. The type of person that leaves a mark in your heart and your loins, and you just never quite forget them. They stay there forever. We first met over a mutual love of both strap-on sex and getting paid for it. Getting paid to do what you love feels like winning the lottery. It tastes delicious. To meet someone in the course of doing what you love and fall for them hard, it doesn't get much better than that. There is someone I want you to meet, one of my favorite clients said to me after a vigorous session. We were laying in a blissful puddle of spent endorphins, and he was staring up at the ceiling with a purposeful look in his face. Her name is Kara. You would love her. I know you two would definitely get along. Sure thing, I replied, happy to do so. I've always been open-minded and was curious what would inspire him to make such a strong statement. What was the worst that he could do? What was the worst that could happen? He was wrong? What if he was right? A small, hopeful animal poked its head out in the landscape of my mind. I was single and over it. Pro-dom work only checked so many boxes. There was space in my life for something new and exciting. Maybe that thing was named Kara. Arrangements were made and the three of us set up to meet for a co-topping strap-on session about a week later. I've always enjoyed co-topping sessions. The energy and flow can be such a rewarding headspace if done properly. There is a fluid, unspoken language if the right groove is hit, the language of flesh and desire and power. The week passed quickly, but not quickly enough. I had to admit I was counting down the days. The moment I saw her, I could tell that she was a powerful package of sexuality contained in a tiny 5'2" frame. Her body was exceptionally toned. Years of classical ballet training had shaped it into a lean weapon. Her waist was so small, I could almost encircle it with my big hands. Oh, do I have to talk about her butt? She had almost no breasts to speak of, any natural tendency towards them combated by extensive exercise. Her brown eyes looked slightly mischievous and up to no good. All of this was accented by her dance-trained butt, which jutted out enthusiastically. I craved to use it as a pillow to rest my head on at night. Someone that lean had no right to have that glorious of a butt. Not that I was complaining. The strap-on session was a blur of sex and exhilaration. We hit it off so well that we basically ignored the man that brought us together. He was the meat in a sandwich of paid-for bread slices that were so busy being dazzled with each other that the meat went unloved. As we Eiffel Towered over him on both ends, we made flirty faces across his bent-over body. He was distracted and didn't notice our building sexual tension, or if he did, perhaps he thought he was the source. He wasn't. At the end of the session, Kara and I had exchanged phone numbers and made plans for a date. We tumbled headlong into a relationship. It was natural and fluid, as effortless as breathing. Our nights together were often spent with me watching her dance at divas. Her fluid sexuality, like mine, would bleed over the edges and make messy watercolors. Everything about her was fascinating to me, and somehow, unbelievably, she was mine. After an evening of built-up sexual tension, watching her gyrate against hungry customers as they stuffed wads of cash into her lingerie, the hope of sharing just a few brief moments of fantasy with her, I would take her home and ass fuck her in her tiny bedroom, a closet under the stairs of her parents' home. I would hold her compact body face down and ass up, my clit fully engorged against the base of my strap-on, and feel the ripples of bliss move through me as I entered her from behind, pressing her head deeply into the pillows with one hand, the other holding her back down, listening to the squeals of pleasure bubbling up as we both rode that wave. It was an endless marvel to me, her raw and honest appetite. No matter what I dished out, she took it and asked for more. That perfect ass was like a magnet to me. I simply could not get enough of it. She would have to bite down on the pillows so her moans would not drift up through the old wooden floorboards and disturb her parents. She was a splayed out butterfly, pinned down as she writhed in her bed sheets, her long black hair trailing across the pillows. She was all ass and hair and endless desire. Lucky, lucky me. Her flesh felt like a perfect fit against mine. And under 6 minutes, booyah. All right, that was one of the good bits. There's more, but you know. Oh, I still miss her. Anyhow,
Oh, I
so
love
that
hearing
happened.
that out loud.
What's that?
I love hearing that out loud. It's so fun to hear it in your own voice. I mean, I've read that story
Oh,
100 times, but it's so fun to hear it out loud.
I'm drooling slightly. Don't mind me. It's fine. Anyhow, good times. So yeah, that happened.
I agree. I love hearing it out loud. And thank you for jumping in and we immediately threw it to you. We didn't even introduce yourselves. That's how rude we are. Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for being here with us.
I was gonna put on my eyebrows, like, but you know what? This is what you. I took a shower. You are welcome. Maybe I did that more for me, but yeah. Anyhow, this is. I'm a pro. I can do this. Throw me in. It's fine.
You showered for us. That is love.
I did. I got
this
out of my
era-
pajamas. I took soap and water. It was you are very welcome.
You've got a backdrop. I mean, this is a whole thing.
Oh, it's chaos. You don't want to know. That's the next novel, because I found that working with Post-it notes are really helpful on a mirror, because you can track the progression as you know what's up.
Yeah.
So anyhow, you don't get to see the novel until it's done. All right, here you go.
I'm sure some eager person is going to watch this and zoom in, trying to read your Post-its in the background, just know.
I can hardly read my own handwriting. If they can, I would be impressed.
All right, I'm going to show you that one thing. Speaking of Post-its, my mom got me this.
Oh, let me see.
Rainbow tower.
I actually have one of those too. I love the rainbow, and it's very satisfying to fiddle with your fingers, I admit. Yeah, multi-purpose. I'm all about the Post-it notes. All right, so I've done, do I answer questions or just, are we going on to the next person? Because I'll just talk at you forever.
I think we're going to do all the readings together, and then we'll just talk about all of them like a big love fest.
Cool, yes. Okay, I like love fest.
June, hello, welcome. We didn't welcome you either. Hi, so nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, nice to be here. Is the audio working?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, because it's going into my headphones, so I just wanted to make sure it was like good. Okay.
Yes. We're good.
Hi.
And I am appreciating the glow behind you. We'll talk about it later. Hello. Welcome.
Hello.
This means you're going next, and I'm gonna read your bio, and wish me luck, because they just told me that I was reading your bio, so let's do this together. Okay, thanks, podcast
I forget
host.
what my bio even says.
Ooh, let's get into it. Okay. June Amelia Rose is an anarchist, leatherdyke fiction writer and submissive transsexual femme living in Brooklyn. Does this sound familiar?
Yeah, that's
Okay, good. So far, so good.
pretty right.
Her story, it's really good. Her stories, Bootlicker and Porn Girl, the Illustrious, were self-released as zines to cult praise. Her writing has also been featured in Fist, a zine for leatherdykes. She has edited 4 books so far, ranging from memoirs about underground punk music to novels about lesbian teenage sexuality. She is currently at work on her first novel, as well as a collection of essays. And then we'll put your Twitter and your Instagram handles somewhere here in the, yes. So yes, set up your story. We're all gonna turn off our video. We can't wait to hear it. Thank you.
Okay. Wow, it's really weird to socialize like this. I haven't read publicly in like over a year, probably. So bear with me. So my story is Torrent and Tumult, a bipolar romance. I had written it basically the day after I got out of the hospital for like mental health stuff. And while it is a it is a fictional story, very much so. Like it also draws on my own experiences. It I it's a lot more happy than a lot of the other stuff I had been writing at that time. So I kind of just wanted to write like a very lighthearted, indulgent story that was just like pure like sex and fun, but like also had like some deeper meaning to it. So I think I'm gonna start at the beginning, just to get anyone curious about what comes later. So there's gonna be a lot of setup, but there's a little bit of sexy. Okay, Torrent to Tumult. My mistress wasn't letting me come for a whole week. She had locked me in chastity many times before. I was the one who had first asked her to. I craved the way she'd take control of my orgasms, deal them out to me, make me beg, deny them just when she felt like fucking with me, because watching me squirm as I was frustrated and not allowed to come turned her on so much. But it was always for a day or two. This would be the first time I was locked up for an extended period of time. My clit belonged to her. The small pink metal cage would stay with me at work, through all my dinners and dates with other partners, while I slept and showered. The excitement was unbearable and heavenly. I spent my days turned on from how hot it was to be locked up for so long, frustrated it wasn't sooner, but knowing it was for my own good. I couldn't wait. I anticipated what she had prepared for me, what lovely prize awaited my greedy little submissive heart. And finally, day 7 came. My body has an addiction to the swings of tumultuous emotions. You were born with rivers of fire inside you, my mother said to me once during a crying fit when I was trying to bite my own tongue out of my mouth. You have the strength and the sadness to be calm. You have the drive to accomplish anything. She didn't know then how apt those words would become on the eve of my diagnosis 20 years later, when the key clicked into the lock as my therapist spoke the litany to me in a divine tongue. Bipolar 1, with features of mixed episodes, rapid cycling, and melancholia. They unfurled like the secrets of my family's jewelry chest, a genetically rich inheritance of chemical imbalance, cooked up in a pressure cooker of psychological trauma. Torrent and tumult, and calm drops on a drooping, dying lotus flower. That was how I lived for most of my life. I would stir and then still. I would start and then freeze. Emotions were like another language to me. I was a foreigner to emotional stability. You can only live for so many years with a deficiency in relating to other people until other people's lives start to blow up too. I think I lost every friend and every relationship I've ever had, all to a mood spoken in words I didn't understand. At a certain point, a change needs to come. The way out is through. When we first met in the rooms, I knew she had come from where I had. Alcoholics Anonymous is just like that. Instantly, you just have a connection with people because they think like you do. They've been through what you have. They've seen the bottoms of the gutters and sewers you've spent your years trying to get out of. Even if you have nothing in common socially, no hobbies, a completely different worldview, none of it matters in the rooms. The fellowship of it all smooths over everything. In those first days, I tried to embrace the hug of the chalky decaf coffee. I always had to take it black because most alcoholics in the rooms won't think ahead to stock soy milk. Hi, I'm Melody. I'm an alcoholic, I would say, my voice flat and nervous and wanting. There's a certain ego death that comes with announcing your ailments to the other members of your special class. The meeting that she sat next to me, the trans women's meeting over on the church on Nostrand and Willoughby, I knew I'd seen her before. The dom who had said everything, the dom who everyone said was too much chaotic energy. Her hair was a searing blonde. Sage used to be a bassist in a punk band nobody's ever heard of, and she rotated for a few years for a punk band everyone has heard of. During her share in her meeting that night, she mentioned bipolar disorder and punk rock. I went up to her afterwards. Hey, can I have your number? I asked her. I'm normally not forward about that kind of thing, but the moment was too good to be passed up. It needed to be seized. Sure, she said as she typed her number into my phone. I just want you to know it's kind of a more than a fellowship thing. Oh, I think I've seen you around the scene before, she said, her face puzzling out a plan. Never knew you were one of us. She looked down at my faux leather bondage cuff. I can think of some uses for you. I was in charge of cleaning her house, doing her laundry, washing her lingerie, all these chores that she delegated so matter of fact. After so many years of alcoholism, poisoning a self I didn't care about, it was helpful to throw myself into caring for someone else. My hands worked for her with so much intention. I got pleasure and guidance out of serving her. One time, while she was beating me with her custom wooden pink mistress paddle with spikes on one end, she barked at me. You love serving me, don't you? Yes, mistress. I love to serve. I love following your orders. Whack. You already do anything I want, she said, because I own you. Yes, mistress. She turned the paddle on its side and dug the edge into the beginnings of a purple bruise, already beginning to break across my ass like sunlight. I cried. You do it because it pleases me, don't you? She said. Yes, mistress, I cried out. Nothing pleases me more. She flipped the paddle over to the spike side, a masochistic reward for answering so well. With a stroke of love, she swiped the paddle against me, my ass splattering a rain of blood across the wall and down her face. Thank God I just got tested, I thought to myself. She licked a drip of blood off her upper lip. You're welcome. And I'll stop there. There's a lot more to it and a lot more sex stuff that happens, but
Thank you so much for sharing, June. I
Thank
think
you.
that's a great place to stop right there.
And then, wait, what happens with the blood? Oh,
Right?
wait, I have the book. Oh, okay, I'll find out.
Cliffhanger right there. It's in the book if you're interested to read the rest of the story. We're gonna jump over to our next reader, who is officially the first podcast book club reader that we are now interviewing for the podcast. Just thought of that. Congratulations, snaps and claps. Mary P. Burns is a longtime resident of New York City. She received a Master of Fine Arts in Playwriting from Columbia University in 1991, after which the Muses departed for points unknown, leaving no forwarding address, so she carved out a career as an executive assistant. When happenstance left her with the opportunity for some major time off, she sharpened her pencils and hoped for the best. Luckily, the Muses returned and she hasn't stopped writing since. Her first novel, Forging a Desire Line, was published by Bold Stroke Books in May 2020. You can find her at maryburns11c@gmail.com. She's also more active on Instagram at marypburns7861. Mary, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a supporter of the podcast. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I love the book club. I ran across you guys on Instagram, was like delighted. So this is fun. Okay, I'm gonna skip around. This one is called Strand of Pearls. Okay. I'm sitting in an intimate bar on First Avenue near 74th Street, one table away from a crackling fire and one frosted French window away from the bitter cold of a January night. The perfect distance for warmth and reminiscence. A Japanese single malt scotch occupies the coaster in front of me. They've become very adept, the Japanese, at making the smoky, silky amber liquid that goes down like honey and then kicks you back, leaving an afterburn in your throat that tastes of charred logs on a brazier. She always comes to mind in moments like this, sultry, smoky, silky, skin so smooth everywhere, a voice like honey, and her scent like burning maple leaves in the fall. Bonfire, her perfume was called. The bottled essence of autumn on fire in the Northeast, she'd said, and it was. Okay, the narrator then flashes back to meeting Pamela for the first time 30 years earlier. We met the winter I landed a coveted in-house temp position at one of the major ad agencies in the city. It was a gig I desperately needed so I could support myself while I got my MBA. Since I hardly looked the part, though, I wasn't sure I'd get the job. In those days, they wanted corporate polish. I was tall and gangly, wore a modified marine buzz cut and three-piece suits from Joseph A. Bank that I could only afford when they had sales, and wingtips, of course. But all Kathy Williams in HR saw when she interviewed me was 120 words per minute, dictation, the dying art of shorthand, French, Spanish, and not opposed to running personal errands. I'd been there just 9 months when Kathy needed a top-notch assistant for the executive floor and found she didn't have anyone on the current staff to turn to except for me. I was aware those assignments went to the straight girls who looked like Perry Mason's assistant, Della Street, who fit in. Kathy didn't ask me to change my appearance. She simply told me to quietly go above and beyond my natural abilities and shine, find a way to bond with both the executives and their assistants, become part of the team, because I'd be there for 3 months working for the one female executive on the floor. The narrator's then sent to Pamela's office and finds her on a phone call. When she hung up, I knocked and walked in. She stood, came out from behind her desk, hand extended. Her regal beauty stole the breath I would have used to say my name. My eyes took in every inch of her without ever leaving her face, until her hand was in mine and I looked down at the long, delicate fingers, the perfectly manicured nails, and blushed. The navy stilettos matched her suit. Her toned figure statuesque, she was as tall as me, and when I looked back into those blue and diamond eyes, I saw a gorgeous woman of a certain age, in that last blaze of mature beauty before time would rob her of everything, leaving her invisible to the world. And I fell in love. A strand of pearls rested between the hollow of her neck and her cleavage, and I desperately wanted to kiss each bead. Instead, I took the index card from her as she spoke and perused the list of names on both sides, people she needed to talk to today on one side, people she'd be unavailable at the moment for on the other side. The narrator then goes on to describe the professional relationship she builds with Pamela, even as she serves her every office need. And then comes a change in that relationship. A few days later, Pamela took me to lunch. She'd just found out her assistant had decided not to return after maternity leave. "Would you stay with me?" she asked. "I know you're in school. We can keep the arrangement exactly as it is, except I've asked HR for a better salary." "May I think about it?" "Of course," she replied. On the way back to the office, we stopped in a chocolate shop so she could get Christmas gifts for the assistants. As the counter girl wrapped the packages, she turned to me and straightened my tie. "Don't think too long. I really want you." Throughout that winter and spring, she took me to lunch once a week to thank me, she said, for all my hard work. We roamed further and further from the neighborhood of the office in search of ever new places, stopping in a store or boutique on the way back to look at things, finding ways to touch each other, a hand, a wrist, the small of a back, as we showed each other scarves or ties or pieces of jewelry we admired. One day we passed a specialty shaving shop and she turned right around and went in, asked to see the razor that would give the closest shave. The gentleman behind the counter brought out 2 different electric shavers. No, for women. He unlocked a case beneath the counter and set a tray of handheld razors in front of her. I watched Pamela study them, pick one up, run her thumb over the blades. I wandered around the store as she looked at those. As much as I loved watching her hands touch anything, I was intrigued with this shop and wanted to know what else it carried. I spotted a small can of shaving cream called Captain's Choice 45, a cherry almond blend, opened it to sniff, and brought it up to the counter. Pamela picked it up and examined it, looked at me. "I love that smell," I said. "It's like cherry pie." She added it to her growing pile of purchases. "Oh no, I can buy my own." "Then go get another for me." Without thinking of the implications, I did. And if you want to find out just how that shaving cream and razor came into play between them, you'll have to buy a copy of the book.
Ooh, buy
That
a
is
copy of the book.
cold. That was cold, Mary. Wow.
You want to know how the shaving cream jumps off? Trust me.
I do, and I'm gonna find out. Yes.
I love these stories. I really do. It's so fun to hear you do them live and out loud, all 3 of you, because I've read them so many times, but I haven't heard you read them. And usually by now we would have done a few more readings in person. And I'm so glad we're doing this. Thank you. Thank you to the Feminist Podcast for having us. Super, super stoked.
Well, thank you all for being here. We are as honored to hear you speak out loud as you guys are to be in this space with us. Speaking of being in this space with us, if you are a fan of the podcast, if you've been listening, this is the third time that we have drug Sinclair Sexsmith into a Zoom to read and talk with us. You know the bio, but I'm going to cover it for any new people. Sinclair Sexsmith, they, them, is the best known butch erotica writer whose kinky, groundbreaking stories have turned on countless queer women, after Ellen, where that's from, who is in all the books, wins all the awards, speaks at all the panels and readings, knows all the stuff, and writes for all the places. And I will say, and edits all the things. That was Artio Strato edits is mine. Their short story collection, Sweet and Rough, Queer Kink Erotica, was a 2016 finalist for the Lambda Literary Award, and they are the current editor of the Best Lesbian Erotica series. You can find more of their work at sugarbutch.net. It occurs to me that we had you on for our quickie episode, our Christmas quickie, a gift to our readers who listen. Of the top 5 episodes that we have for listens all time, the quickie episode, the Christmas quickie, Sinclair's Christmas quickie, and Sinclair's interview are in that top 5 space. So we are so thankful to have you back. It also occurs to me that in that Christmas quickie, you actually read part of the story that you have in Best Lesbian Erotica Volume 5. So we did ask you to read for us tonight. If you want to start where that one left off, you could. Or if you want to read something different, that's, you know, we leave it all the way open, dealer's choice here. So whatever you would like to bless us with for a few minutes, and then once Sinclair reads, we'll jump into the portion and we'll all talk together in a free-for-all like we do.
I have no idea where I left off the other one. So what if I read from a brand new story that is
yes
on Sugar Butch, that is the Ode Part 1, that, let me just try to remember my password. There we go. I'll pull it up online. So it's actually password protected. Sometimes the dirty stuff or the personal stuff I keep under password, but we'll read a few minutes of this one, and then if you all are listening and you want to read the end, just message me and I'll get you the password. Okay, so content warning, some fingering, some dirty talk, some ownership. This is some power dynamic, of course. By the time I have 4 fingers inside my boy's front hole, he is begging for something in his mouth. Please, please, he whispers. His stomach is all tight and crunched, his mouth is open, and he's grasping everywhere with his hands, the sheets, the pillows, me. I want. I wait, what do you want? I already know, but I love when he squirms. Your dick in my mouth, something, anything. I still have all my clothes on. I'm not really about to take my fingers out of him, wrestle my jeans off, and reposition over his face just so he can have something in his mouth, even though I really do love how he sucks me off. This boy, my boy, 9 years we've been together, and he is as cock hungry as ever. I have a healthy collection of a dozen different sizes, most of them in that soft silicone that the good toy stores are carrying these days. I love the pressure of a strap-on in his mouth and his cunt. Hard to know if I like that feeling or feeling his lips and tongue on my actual flesh more. Good boy, I say, reaching and adjusting so I can slide 2 fingers from my other hand into his mouth. It's awkward and I'm poorly balanced, using a lot of strength to keep myself from falling over. How about, wait, I slide my fingers out of his mouth and he whimpers. He's still breathing hard, my fingers still inside his cunt, but gentle and still while I move around and try to find the right toy. This, I say, and hand him the gag, shaped like the head of a dick, just a little more elongated than your usual ball gag. Yes, please. He wipes at it with the sheet, spits on it, wipes again, and puts it in his mouth. We store the toys clean, but they inevitably get some dust or cat hair on them. Right away, he lies back on the bed, getting himself resettled, refocused. He's beautiful, handsome, gorgeous, curves in some places, but mostly muscle and density, strength, and stamina. He doesn't bother to fasten the gag behind his head, just tucks in the ends and holds it in. It's not like he doesn't want it there. He arches his back and neck, moaning behind the gag. I get myself situated between his legs again, and he tightens his cunt around my fingers, pulsing, contractions like a storm, getting closer, getting closer. I brush my hands over his thighs lightly, gently, slowly, just for that extra sensation, and because his thighs are my favorite, thick enough to grab a handful, to bite, to slap, to wrap around me. It's the part of him I watch. I still grant glances when he moves. I salivate when I think of grabbing him. He pulls my fingers into him with his muscles, and inside of him opens. Suddenly there's more room, so I move my fingers slowly, a soft massage on his upper walls where I know it'll hit the underside of his clit. He reaches his hand down to touch himself from the outside and feels my hand. He moans again, saying some string of words, low and breathy behind the gag, but I can't tell what he's saying. I'm saying, good boy, touch your dick, touch your clit. You feel so good. I love how tight you are. It makes me want to pound you hard, my good boy. And other encouraging, sweet and dirty things like he likes to hear and I like to say. Soon he's coming, muscles squeezing so tight, he's pushing my hand out of him, and there's only the tips of 2 fingers just at his opening. And that's when he ejaculates, squirting, gushing out as I keep my fingers gently moving over his cunt while his fingers frantically rub every contraction out of him. He cries out, then moans, his body shaking a little as the orgasm rolls through him. I leave my fingers touching, but slide them all the way out, gently holding, just a little pressure as I lay next to him as he calms. It's a short piece, but that's it. That's the first part anyway. I guess hypothetically there's a second part. Don't tell anyone, but it hasn't been written yet. But hypothetically there's a continuation of that piece eventually. I'll add the link to the show here.
Thank you very much. Your secret is safe with us. This is a safe space. We're just on Facebook. It's fine. Nobody will know. Thank you so much. I think I mentioned this last time. We love hearing you read also, Sinclair. So thank you so much. All right. So I just want to read something from your introduction, Sinclair, that I loved. And I will tell you that I am not really an intro reader. Like I love anthologies, but I never read the introductions, but I read this one and I love this. You say, and not to get personal here, but I love sex. That's not that you're not telling anybody anything they don't already know. I just want you to know that to not read is like TMI to me. Just putting that out there.
I'm shocked. I had no idea.
You had no idea.
Just, are you scandalized? Oh.
If I had pearls, I would be clutching them.
Oh, now I'm thinking of Mary's story. Okay, let's get back on track here, people. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about what you say in the introduction about why erotica is important, and specifically why is lesbian erotica important?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I was chewing on in this particular anthology is around just what is erotic at all, and what kind of acts are erotic, what do people find erotic, and is erotic more than just the sex acts or the genital based acts? And as many of the stories talk about and find, it definitely is. And some of the most erotic work I've ever read has not been about sex, it's been about, I don't know, something amazing, something else amazing. I mean, I'm thinking of like the opening of Octavia Butler's book Fledgling, which is like, she's like literally eating flesh, and it's the most erotic. It's so beautiful. Or the book Perfume, where he's such a, like, I don't know what he's called, but like a super smeller kind of person. He's like super sensitive to scents, and so all of the scents are described. It's incredibly erotic. I mean, he's also kind of a murderer, so that gets eroticized as well, but that's and it's also an amazing novel. But both of those, like, they're not novels of erotica, but they're so erotic to me. And so that's a big piece of, I think, what the intro is about. But going back to your other question of like, why is it important? That feels like something that I'm constantly thinking about and writing about. And I'm sure that there's pieces of that just in the mission of my work. So that bleeds into everything, where having validation and just like undoing the shame that happens from having a non-conventional desire. And basically all desire is non-conventional, to be fair. I mean, there's very little room for what kind of desire is acceptable. So having these non-conventional lives, non-conventional bodies, non-conventional desire, we never get enough validation for that. And so I think that leaning into that and writing about it or thinking about it, reading other people's ideas about it is kind of radical, and can be a liberational act, and can be transformative even as a writer or a reader. So those are just some of the really big guiding forces of my work.
So question for everybody. This is the best lesbian erotica anthology. Do you identify as lesbians, or if not, what drew you to this anthology?
Rain, go ahead.
Rain.
I actually identify as queer, and what drew me to this anthology, maybe a tiny bit of a broken heart. Just I'd had this story. It was a way, I think, of catharsis of this story that's been going around in my head. And for me, when the words are in my head, they knock so loudly, they scream, they batter at the door, and you have to let the words out. I think that I got it resolved by I mean, Sinclair, we talked about this, and this is actually my first time seeing, I've talked to you forever online, but I haven't seen you, the live action model. How's it going? You're somehow friendlier and less intimidating, because online you're very Donnelly, but you're more like a less intimidating teddy bear. But very badass still. I'm trying to say incredibly badass. I'm queer, and I fell in love with someone who, well, just sloppy, messy sexuality that doesn't fit into defined boxes, because mine never has. And then you get to write stuff and take the words out of your head and share your sexuality. And if you can let one other person know that just because we don't fit in these societally approved, boxes, when you actually advocate and speak out and let other people know it's okay not to, none of us fit in boxes anyway. And the more that you make that clear and be like, look, there's no such thing as normal. What the fuck is normal? I don't know what normal is. So it's a love story. And now it's published, and I'll be able to look at it years from now. And I want to thank Sinclair for the opportunity.
I think, Mary, you wanted to speak next.
Was this a two-part question? I know the first part was I identify as a lesbian, but was there a second part to the question?
Just what drew you to this anthology?
You mean to publish in it?
It specifically being a lesbian anthology. So you identify as lesbian.
Yeah, I do.
Wanted to publish a lesbian anthology.
Yeah, I've read Sinclair's work for a long time, and then an email dropped into my box a couple of years ago, and I submitted the first story, which they published, which just blew me away. It was also at the time that I was about to publish my first novel, and romance has kind of come in a box, and I wanted to do something outside the box, and which I did, and then Sinclair published it, and I was like, wow. Because we do have a lot of, we're not confined by certain, Sinclair said reading this stuff is radical. It really is. I've always been looking for different things to read, because there are just so many sides of me, and not all my friends know those sides exist, etc. But I try to get affirmation through things like these anthologies and other books that I read.
Great. June, what about you?
Yeah, I identify as a lesbian, although I think as time goes on, it becomes more and more blurred, and I think some people are really scared of that, and sometimes I am, but it's kind of comforting, and it's cool to explore different things and not have to be completely rigidly defined. But obviously I still identify as a lesbian, and I guess the way I would say it is I mostly date like other lesbians or dykes or people who have some sort of affinity for that. So I had always really wanted to be a writer, like it was like my like goal in life, but I didn't feel like I had anything worth writing about. And then after I came out, I suddenly felt like I had a lot to write about. And I was like, oh, okay. And so naturally I found myself writing like a lot about sexuality. And so I just kind of like fell into the erotica way. And I think I just like, I have read a lot of anthologies, so I was familiar with the publisher, and so it was just like, so I actually was in last year too, and that was the first time I had ever been published. And then this year it was, so it's been really great. Yeah, I didn't submit for the next one because I wanted to give other people space to spread their wings, but yeah.
Wanted to open the spot, wanted to let the next generation in.
Yeah, I'm working on like longer form like novels right now and stuff, like a ton of stuff. It's absolutely insane. But I really, that was like my big thing this past year was like don't take on like too many projects, like stay focused, like finish the book, like keep writing, like get to the end of the novel and stuff. So I had to like take a step back from a lot of projects. People would come to me and I'd be like, no, I don't have the time for that. I can't do it. I can't do it. And it worked out because the book is basically finished.
Congratulations. Finishing a book in the middle of a panini. Look at you.
Amazing.
And yes, I am going to call it anything other than what it actually is called. My next question is for everyone. And I think it's in looking at everyone's stories that were in the anthology, there was a lot of them had kink themes, a lot of them had BDSM themes, and you know, dominance and those kind of things included inside of the story. We talked a little bit earlier about, is that, you know, just baseline dynamic in lesbian relationships now? And I kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on how BDSM and those kind of kink specifics overlay in lesbian and queer communities, and why you felt that it was important to include it as an aspect of your stories for the anthology. And you can, whoever wants to jump in.
I have an answer. I truly believe that I haven't done scientific research, but it's how you were born. It's what your innate wiring is. And just like you can be like, okay, I'm going to be vanilla and I'm not going to admit my sexuality. I'm going to get the white picket fence and I'm going to toe the line for society, but you're never being your honest true self. And I have never been very good at suppressing my honest true self. My mother busted me doing live action role play abduction fantasies at the age of 8 in front of the linen closet because I was getting pillowcases to put over my head to imagine that I'd been abducted. And my mom's like, okay, well, and there was no touchy uncles. Like it was, this is how I was born. This is who I am. And I didn't have parents that shamed me. I mean, I certainly have lesbian hippies. They're too busy meditating to shame anybody. I've certainly had lesbian friends and partners that had no interest in kink, but kink is a huge cornerstone of my sexuality and I can't untangle it. I've tried doing non-kinky things and I fall asleep. I'm so bored. I need the kink. I do like, and I'm also my true and authentic self. And when you are your true and authentic self, you attract others that are interested in the same energy. And I never, by being your honest and true authentic self, you're going to find that you're surrounded by people that accept you for who you are. And that's such a beautiful feeling. So don't ever wear a fake mask. The effort it takes to put this fake mask to be a fake version of yourself so people will like a fake version of you is exhausting. And I refuse to invest my energy in that way. And also I'm super fucking kinky.
Don't wear a fake mask. Wear a real mask, kids. That's right. Rain, can you talk about why you felt it was important to include those aspects into the story that you wrote?
Yes, because I'm horrible at writing fiction. I'm really trying to work on that. That is a weakness as a writer. The whole thing is memoir. Every word is true. I aspire to get to the point where I can be better and more fluid at writing fiction. It's hard. So I wrote a true story, and I've had some editors and they're like, we don't want first person, we don't want memoir, like, and luckily Sinclair's, I'm pouring out my broken heart in the story I've carried around for like a decade. And Sinclair's like, okay, you give it to me, I'll take the baby, I will nurture it. It was cathartic to get it out. But yes, the reason the kink was in there is because that's exactly what happened, including getting the cum in my ear, which is pack Q-tips in your toy kit if you're having sex with a squirter. PSA for the day.
Safety first, kids. June, what about you?
The question was
just the overlay, the overlay of kink themes and BDSM in the stories, and why you included it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, someone said before about how it's like is it almost seems like trendy in a way, like not in a bad way, but just like it's way more like upfront online and like in communities and stuff, and that's great. But I think people are just really like curious about it, you know, like they really most of us have been told, sorry, I'm kind of like trying to collect my thoughts. Yeah, people are just like curious, and I think it's pretty natural for anyone who comes out to want to explore like different facets of their sexuality in different ways, especially in less like quote unquote normative ways. So I have found that it's becoming more common, and everything I write is just kind of like I write based on experience, but I kind of like remix my own personal experiences to create like a completely new story. Like there are things in my story that's in this anthology that have happened to me, but they didn't happen to me in that way, and they certainly didn't happen in like the context of that relationship, and that relationship was not like it, and so it's just very different. And I've like gotten better with like writing stuff like that. It's been kind of hard lately though, because this is like the most unsexy time imaginable. So things have taken like much weirder turns, but everything that I write has like some sort of like kinky side to it. Like my next thing is like a horror novel, and it's like a kinky horror novel. And then the next thing after that is going to be a kinky horror novel as well. Definitely not as wholesome as the story that I read today.
I would say the fine collection of hitty implements that I can see on the wall in the reflection was what they would call a tell, a little bit of a giveaway. Nice collection, by the way. Funny
enough, this is like, I have okay stuff, but I need to get way more. Because I'm like a bottom, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just have like a flogger and a paddle, and it's like people want like a ton of shit. So like I know how to like throw a whip and stuff. I'm like, why don't I have one of those? But
I mean, the collection behind you that I can see is incredibly impressive. Just hanging back there. I'm like,
you.
Let's talk about backdrop game tonight. Mary, what about you? your story had some of that dominance play into it. Can you talk about why that was important for you to include it?
Interestingly enough, there was more in my short story last year. I decided this year to move away a little bit from it because now I'm becoming intrigued with less is more. And if I get around to writing, there's something in the Tumblr up here. If I get around to working on it with even less in terms of the kink. I just think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think it's an across the board thing whether you're straight or gay. I mean, not that I'm running out there looking for straight kink, but somehow I stumbled upon Tumblr like 4 years ago, and then of course they booted it. It was definitely a lot of kink there, and then they booted us. And a lot of people went over to bdsmlr.com, and I followed because there were a lot of people posting things that I followed, and I kind of like their photographs. I'm a voyeur at heart, and I just love looking at certain things. But then I realized I don't necessarily need, all the kink. I like reading about it, but for me now, less is beginning to get to be more. I want erotica, and it's really hard to draw that line and find what is erotic to people, like Sinclair was talking about. It's different for everyone, but I do understand that readers love it, and there are certain aspects of it obviously that I love. So I needed for that particular story in this year's version to have my narrator, what's the best way to put it, because I don't want to give things away. Toys were used, and there was a need for those toys in that particular story, which is why I used them.
Depilation is totally on my Fat Life kink list, by the way. Anything can be kinky in the right circumstance. But, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody put in their personal experiences, and there's something very vulnerable about that, whether or not you fictionalize part of it or not. And I was so grateful to see such a mix of things about mental health, things about sex work in general always makes me happy, but sex work love also makes me incredibly happy. And Sinclair, we were talking about how there's even like stories about asexuality, and it seems like you were really bold in your choices about what you included, what gets to be considered erotic. So I don't know, I want to thank you as a reader for doing that, and for everyone for writing such vulnerable pieces. So, and Sinclair, we're wondering, what do you love about these 3 stories that were read today too? Like, what drew you to them?
I filter for quality of writing so much. So they're beautiful stories, and there's so many lines that catch my ear, catch my eye, and just stay with me about the longing, the desire, the craving, the want, and that feeling. Like, we all know what it feels like to have that erotic want, and I feel like when a story can make me feel that way when I'm reading it, like, that's what I'm really looking for. And all of these have so much want in them, and feel, and like heart. So the vulnerability is there, the sweetness, and the dirty, like, at the same time, right? Like, it can be like come in your ear, or toys, or a straight razor, or like all these different aspects that then like have this heart of gold to it, kind of thing. And I love that combination so much. So, and I look for unique things that I haven't seen. I look for things that people, certainly like demographics that are generally underrepresented, and story types, and story arcs that are underrepresented. I mean, there's so much, like, first date strap-on sex, for example, right? Like, which I have personally written a lot of, so it's not like that's a bad thing, but there's just a lot of it out there. So I was really trying to stay away from first dates, for example, because like it's really easy for two characters to be very excited about each other and really want to fuck and on the first date, and you just get to be excited and like learn everything about them. And it's kind of, it's very it's a very useful trope in erotica, but it gets kind of boring. Like, what about the long-term love that is like 15, 20 years gone, and how are we still sexy for each other? You know, I want to see those kind of stories. I want to see the like middle relationship stories where there's still more to go, but we're working on it. And I want to see the, you know, ones where there's just no toys, or and it's still really dirty, or there's no touching and it's very erotic. You know, there's all sorts of ways to kind of play with something a little bit new. So that's the other piece that I'm always really looking for. And I love how much diversity around mental health is in this anthology. I love how much diversity with asexuality and ability is in this one, and on volume 4. And there's still some demographics and some places that are really lacking in these anthologies too. Like, I don't think there are any Black writers in this volume 5, and I feel, or characters for that matter, but I don't like that. You know, I have been searching high and low for volume 6 to really try to figure out how to develop some relationships with erotica writers, and also so they trust me with their story, but then also have a good place to encourage and trust and like share with that stories in mind. So while there's some pieces that I really am proud of in these 2 books that I've done so far, like there's still more to go, and I'm really excited to keep working on it.
Yeah, I hope we can help with that. I think that's one of the things that we want to do with the podcast, is to, bring more diverse writers, awareness into the space, because I can't say that that's not something that didn't stick out to me as I was reading the novel as a Black queer woman. But one thing that really struck me, and that was common in the stories that you guys read here tonight and that are in the anthology, is I was struck by the sweetness. I was struck by the softness that was in each story. In Rain, in your story, Strap-ons and Sodomy, how delicately she like covets this ballerina body. It immediately brought just that sweetness, and that it was almost like fragile. It was almost like holding a piece of delicate art, but then in a space of like a full-on orgy. So just, setting up that space of what it is, but then also being able to kind of, for lack of a better word, drill down into a smaller scene of just really accentuating that that softness between the characters. I said it earlier, I think Mary's Strand of Pearls story was one of my favorites. And I think in that story, what caught me is kind of, it wasn't necessarily the older woman intern thing, but much more of the like the softness of them. Like once it got to where they wanted to, they were going out to lunch further and further away from the office, and then they were, sometimes they were touching hands, they were touching the small of the back, all of the back. So it was very like a buildup that felt earned to get to the part of the story where they're actually in her home. That sweetness that was in there. And June, I think as someone who is bipolar, the vulnerability of meeting someone who is also bipolar and entering into a relationship with that person already puts you on a different level of vulnerability and opening yourself up. But then that extra layer of the subplay and the mistress, and it's just very well taken care of. Like you feel the love between the characters as much as you experience the role play and the submissiveness between. So I think that was probably my favorite and the most touching part of me reading the anthology, not all of the stories felt necessarily erotic, but every story felt sweet. Every story felt like the things that I should feel when I read or see the lesbian rom-coms. I felt that in every one of the stories that we read. So I just want to personally say thank you for the work that you did in this anthology and bringing them all together. I think Karen has one other question.
Yes, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for being here again. This will be a podcast episode. Yes, somebody nod on the team. Yes, okay. So yes, please do listen. I'm changing the last question, y'all, because I can. So Mary, you've heard this already. Hopefully you have your answer ready now. So for Valentine's Day, Princess Jera and I are doing an Evil Valentine's Day edition. And I think where we've landed is that we're gonna watch a queer movie and live tweet it. I think that's where we landed. So we're crowdsourcing this. So what is your favorite queer movie? What should we watch? Sinclair, do you want to start?
The Duke of Burgundy. If you haven't seen that one, I see from your faces you have. One of the best DS movies I've ever seen. It's all women in the whole film. There are no men. And it's very strange, slightly altered universe where like everyone is an entomologist and studies butterflies and they trade in butterflies. But there's also like a human toilet and a coffin and a like, and panty. Anyway, it's beautiful and slightly weird, a little bit like dream sequence occasionally, but some very complicated DS at the heart of it. And I feel like it's a film that nobody really knows about. It kind of, is it from like Austria or somewhere? It's like a European something, but anyway, it's beautiful. Duke of Burgundy, that's what I say. That's my vote.
Noted, thank you. Anybody else want to go?
I second Duke of Burgundy. It's a very, very good movie, very hot. Definitely like one of those movies that like sticks with you for a while, and it's like really fun to watch. Like I don't think I've met anyone who's watched it and been like, I didn't like that movie. Like my straight friends like that movie.
It's very artsy. Like it's very beautiful. Yeah.
It is very artsy. Yeah, we saw it a couple of years ago, and I think we're still thinking about it here. Yeah, and as we talked about in book club, it took me like 5 minutes to arrive at the answer. The half of it was the movie that my partner and I had just seen like maybe less than a year ago, and it was totally fun. It was so cute, and it's about teenagers, which usually I'm like, oh please, isn't there anything else out there? But this was really, really well written. So. And also, I don't know if you could ever find it, but from back in the 80s, Liana, that was one that still sticks with me all these years later.
Rain, what do you got for us?
Oh, I was homeschooled in a commune by filthy hippies, and I was not allowed to watch television. I grew up with no TV, no newspaper, no radio, no school, but I can make a lot of tofu. And what was allowed was books. And I don't watch TV, and I've watched a handful of movies in my life because I'm either writing or reading. I've never eaten meat in my life. I'm a lifelong vegetarian. And people were like, well, don't you crave meat? I'm like, how can I? So people try and be helpful, and they're like, you should watch this. I'm like, how? There's so much how do you have time to watch TV and movies? It baffles me. I'm not gonna I'm sorry. Like I've seen like 5 movies in my life. I'm not the person to ask. I did
not know that about you. That's fantastic. I hope that there's a lesbian sex, or a non-lesbian for that matter, sex on the commune story.
I'm writing my memoirs. A fat bald guy from New York with 9 wives is not the living incarnation of God, no matter what he says. Also, when God says he's not banging, he's totally banging. It was enforced celibacy in the commune. So there were 2,000 members here where I live, and there were 22 children. I left when I was 16, but I never picked up TV or newspapers or movies. So I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. But read, I'm telling you, reading is amazing. And write erotica, write some erotica is what I'm saying. Yeah, I just never got in the habit.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That is a story. That's amazing. You're
that's
not
this story.
yeah. You know, you're not really missing anything with TV. It's not going anywhere. I mean, who needs it? Books rule anyway. The books are always better than the movie, so it'll be fine.
Fact.
I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with us tonight. Go out and pick up Best Lesbian Erotica Volume 5, edited by Sinclair Sexsmith. You're going to love it. It is full of the kinkiest, loveliest, sweetest, sexiest, horniest stories that you've read. There's a little bit of everything in there. The representation is on point. If you want to get in touch with any of the writers, please check out the show notes that we have. We will link to all of their social media. You can find Mary on Instagram. I'm scrolling up at Mary P. Burns 7861. Head over to sugarbutch.net to check out more from Sinclair Sexsmith. Head over to raindegrey.com, RAINDEGREY.com for more from Gray. Check out June Amelia Rose on Twitter and Instagram at anarcho_slut, ANARCHO_slut for more writing and depravity. You know, you want some of that. Check us out, Feminist Erotica Podcast on Facebook at Feminist Erotica, on Twitter at Facebook Erotica. What is it? Twitter, Facebook, Feminist, Facebook Erotica, Twitter. We're out there. Come find us. We want to hear from you. Any last words from anyone? We are so thankful for you. We love you. It's amazing. I'm going to read stories again.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been so wonderful to hear all of you read your stories and to see your faces. It's been a long time since I've seen June and Mary and Rain. Such a pleasure to like actually meet you and chat a little bit.
I've been internet stalking you for a while.
For years. I've been following you on Twitter for I don't even know how long, years.
Well, yeah. It's a long time. And occasionally I'll send you like memes and pep up and here's some chocolate. But you're such a sweetie pie. You come across as a little more ferocious on Twitter, I'll have you know.
Oh, that's good to know. Maybe I should tweet more.
Oh no, just you're very badass and DS and rawr and leather and I'm like, oh okay, grr, I like it. But you know, there's also a soft marshmallowy core to you. I see. No, I don't mean to call you out. I'm sorry.
No, it's just
pleasure.
Totally true.
I know I'm saying it because it's true.
It's such a pleasure to see you three also. Thanks for having me again and for honoring this book so much. I'm so glad. I really appreciate it.
And keep editing. I love your work. I love your work.
You're doing a service. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're helping so many people, even if you're not really aware of what it is you're doing. And I'm glad I see that we're joined by an adorable furry thing. What you're doing is actually valuable work. Sex is such a powerful currency. And the fact that you're investing your time in putting this together, there's going to be someone in some backwater town in the middle of nowhere that is going to be saved by everybody's words.
I was just going to say, yep.
Yeah, what we're doing is valuable. Everyone. Keep it up.
Always can't ever say that or hear it enough. I think it's so true. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure. I've been really down in the dumps lately about like writing stuff, and so this socializing with other writers and stuff has really like lifted me up. So thank you.
Thank you guys. We're so thankful. We're so honored. Everyone, have a good night. Bye-bye.